Welcome to the Workbench. I'm Doug. Have you been doing a lot of sewing lately? Creating a lot of nice projects on your sewing machine? If you have, chances are it's time to do a little maintenance and cleaning on the machine. This is something that you can do at home that'll keep your machine purring like a kitten. So let me show you how easy that is. We first want to begin by raising your presser foot lever so that we can detach the foot. Okay, next we have two screws holding on the needle plate. So it's kind of helpful to either use a real short screwdriver or a long blade screwdriver to get access to these screws. Okay, so what we want to do is remove the two screws and take away the needle plate. Okay, and you always want to inspect the needle plate opening where your needle travels past. Okay, sometimes if you were to break a needle or maybe tugging and pulling a little bit, or maybe your thread got hung up on top, then your needle could come down and put rough marks onto here, which could cause some thread to break. So you always want to make sure that that's nice and smooth. If you take a look at it and it looks like a beaver's been chewing on it, it might even be a good idea to go to your retailer and get a replacement needle plate. Okay, but it's going to be common to see a lot of threads that may impact into your feed dog area. And if that buildup gets too heavy, then the feed dogs won't come up as high as they should be, and you'll have a little trouble with the feeding of your fabric. Okay, this machine hasn't had a lot of use, and the needle plate was just removed and cleaned not too long ago, so it's not so bad. Okay, and then next, if you have your nice accessory tray attachment, you want to remove that. And then pull down your front door, and you're going to see the oscillating hook system. Okay, so we next want to remove the bobbin case by pulling on the release lever and forward. We can set that off to the side. And then next, we want to remove the race cover. So each one of these plastic tabs have to be moved towards the outside, as that locks it into place against these two pins. And once these are out of the way, you just kind of lift up to remove what they refer to as the race ring. Okay, and then you have the shuttle hook itself. And the shuttle hook pulls right away. And this is what actually picks up your thread off of your needle and forms your stitch. It's always a nice idea to inspect this to make sure that it's nice and smooth coming off of the tip of that. If you've broken the needle, it could have maybe put a small burr on this, which could cause maybe a skipping problem or cause thread break. Okay, so your retailers can polish that off, or if need be, you can always replace that hook. It's fairly inexpensive. Okay, but then what you're going to see is a buildup of lint and fuzz that impacts into this groove that hook follows. And when a stitch is made, your thread has to go through that area. So lint and fuzz is going to restrict the flow of that upper needle thread. Okay, so we want to make sure that we clean that out good. Sometimes that could be impacted so much that it may help to have even a small screwdriver with a small tip on it. So you can then position it within this track here and swoop out any of the heavy lint and fuzz that you might see. Yeah, we got a little bit coming out of that one, don't we? Okay. Sometimes the tweezers helps. Sometimes you may want to use a brush, or maybe even a mini vacuum if you have it. But once you remove the majority of it, then even canned air will help get out some of the very fine particles. Okay, so canned air is very efficient to use, but you have to be careful when you're using it. You know, if you were to take this can and if you lean it or shake it, you're going to see moisture coming out from the freon that gives it that force. Okay, so you have a nice air tube here, and if you hold the can upright, you can spray with this and then use this to remove all the lint and fuzz. Okay, now once you get it cleaned out, it's a good idea to just put a light lubrication, again, in this track. So as you see when I'm rotating the hand wheel, it'll give you access to that entire area. Okay, so if I put a couple drops of oil on this shop towel, and this is just a clear sewing machine oil that's commonly stocked at your Baby Lock retailers. Just put a few drops onto, even a piece of cotton fabric would work fine for you, which you probably have laying around in your stash. Okay, so as we rotate this around, we can wipe this oil within that tracking area that the hook fits into. Okay, and if you look, I got a little bit more dirt even though I thought I had it all removed. So the oil will act as a cleaner as well as a lubrication point. Okay, and then doesn't hurt to put just a little bit onto your hook area. We don't want to drench this, because if we had a lot of oil in here when we start to sew, we're going to get a lot of oil on our fabric. Okay, and then you can position the hook driver, is what they refer to, and then position your hook so that it fits in on the other side. Your race ring, make sure it's nice and clean. You've removed all the lint and fuzz that may be in that area. Then on the bottom you have a little stud that fits into a notch on your hook race unit. And the flat portion will always go to the top. So you can use those two as a reference for reinstalling the hook race back into place. Once you've done that, then all you have to do is position your locking tabs back over until you hear a little click. And that's going to ensure that they're setting directly on that post. Okay, now part of the maintenance, and something I just want to also explain while we have you here, is the adjustment of your bobbin case. Your bobbin case tension is the foundation for your upper thread tension. And on the bobbin case like this, for this system, the tighter you have your bobbin thread, the tighter you're going to have your upper thread. And we all know what happens when we have our threads too tight. While sewing, we're going to get some puckering on our fabric. We could experience some thread breakage. So on a mechanical sewing machine, just like any other sewing machine, you want to have the correct balance between your bobbin thread and your upper thread. So the bobbin case, typically something I learned 42 years ago when I started servicing machines, is how to adjust these. And it's pretty common for any bobbin case like this. What I normally do, let me show you first of all, that I would want this rotating so that when I pull on the thread, it's spinning clockwise. Now I hold a little pressure on a bobbin case while I pull it around and lock it into the spring. You want to make sure you feel that snap. Okay, and then if I take some of that thread and wrap it around my finger and let the bobbin case hang, it should not drop down to the floor. Okay, but when I give it a little shake up and down, I should see it drop slowly. But you see this one's not dropping. So that's an indication that the bobbin thread is a little bit too tight. Okay, so you have an adjusting screw, and all of our machines come with two different screwdrivers, one to accommodate the bobbin case. You would just loosen the screw, maybe about 1/8 of a turn. Okay, this is pretty intricate. It doesn't take much to make a big difference. You see, I didn't rotate that too much. Now with it hanging, when I'm bouncing my hand, I'm getting a drop in that bobbin case. So this is what we're looking for. Again, if it dropped all the way down, it's too loose, you want to tighten it. If it doesn't drop at all, then it's too tight. You want to loosen it just a tad. Okay, then we can position it back into the bobbin case. Now, you noticed to remove this, I had to pull on this lever, okay, and that releases the lock. Okay, but the best way to reinstall it is just to rotate it so that it's in the proper position with his finger up to the top. But leave that lever closed so that when you push it in, you feel that and hear that distinct click. Sometimes if you use the lever in an out position when you install it. You may think it's in all the way, but it's not. Then when you start to sew, the needle could come down and crash into that bobbin case, or the bobbin case could fall out of the machine. So this just ensures that you have it locked in all the way. Okay. Now, after we get done, do a little sewing. So I'm just going to trim a little bit of that thread. And then we're going to reinstall the needle plate. Remember, just to keep a good eye on that to make sure that you don't have any markings or any burrs, especially, maybe on the top, because then your delicate fabrics could hang up a little bit on that as it's running through your machine. So a lot of times I can just use my fingers just to tighten these up and get them as snug as I can. And then I'll use my longer screwdriver to tighten it down. And these screws are beveled, kind of wedge shaped. So they help position that needle in that perfect spot. Okay, after we're done with that, we can go ahead and we can close our bobbin case door, lower our foot, and then anytime I clean and lubricate, I like to do some stitching on the machine. Because if not, there may be some residue from a little bit of oil or something on here, and if you were to start sewing on some expensive silk, you may be disappointed if you get some of that oil on there. So I just like to run some through, and during the stitching process, that thread will clean any remaining away. So to sew off the machine, and for a few more tips, we'll go ahead and start by adding the accessory tray. Very nice on this machine. It actually holds all of your different accessories and makes it real handy for you. But it also gives a nice little surface for your fabric to slide on. Okay? So first thing we want to do is make sure that we have our presser foot lifter lever in the up position. When this is up, it releases the tension disc to ensure that your thread lays between those tension plates. Sometimes we've seen customers thread it with this presser foot down, disc close, and then go to sew. It's very loose and it could jam up your machine. Okay, next we want to make sure that we position the take-up lever to its highest position. Anytime you start to sew, the take-up lever should be in the up position. So we'll take our thread, we'll go through this first thread guide, come underneath number 2, always marked, come up to the take-up lever number 3, then you have a little hook here, and then the thread guide, which could be placed either on the left side or the right side. I prefer the left because it's a little tighter here going into the needle. Okay, and then once you get the thread through there, you can go ahead and lower your presser foot. And when you do, you'll feel extra strength on your thread, just to make sure that you're getting a nice throw coming off of your spool of thread on top and through your tension area. And it feels a little tight, so I'm going to back this off to 5 where my marking is. If your bobbin were to hang up while sewing, it's going to cause thread breakage and some puckering of your fabric. Okay, and then to thread the needle, just snip your thread. And go through the needle. I'm using my experience over the past 40 years to thread it. But some of you may find that using a mechanical needle threader is easier for you. Some machines come with them, some don't. But your Baby Lock retailer would have them available, and they can show you how to use that to make that a little bit easier. Okay, after I thread my needle, I always position it underneath the foot so that it's going towards the back. And then I'm going to position the fabric under the foot. I'm going to rotate so that we're going to be doing a wide zigzag, and I'm going to reduce my stitch length a little bit. That way I can do more sewing to allow that thread to pass through to retrieve any little bit of oil that may remain. Isn't that smooth? I can use the reverse lever so that the machine stitches back and forth. And then when stopping, I again want to make sure that my take-up lever is its highest position. If you notice here, I got lucky and it stopped right there. That's one of the advantages of sewing with one of the Baby Lock machines that has your needle up, needle down function. Okay, we'll just take a quick look at it. Very nice on top side. Very nice on that bottom side. I'm quite happy with that. I'm just going to make one more pass just to ensure there's no oil. Wow. Now I'm confident that I can start that next project, that new creation, without having any technical problems with my machine. But as always suggested, please take your machine into your Baby Lock retailer once a year so that they can take the machine apart and oil all the remaining components that you don't have access to. Now that you know, get out and sew.